Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Iraq Sam podcast. And today we have a special guest. His name is Josh, and he is an OEF veteran. He served 9 years in the U.S. Army, and he's here today to talk to us about how that experience was. He's an entrepreneur and the host of the Iraq Sam podcast, the voice of the vets, here on YouTube. Hey, how's it going? You know, it's awesome talking to the vets. We strive to get all their stories out. Yeah, I mean, it's very important to share their stories. That's true. So tell us, Josh, how was it joining the military? You joined at a really young age, correct? Yeah, I joined at 18. So at 18 you joined. How did your parents feel about that? What were some of the things that were going through their mind that they relayed to you about joining at such a young age? Was there a lot of resistance to that, or were they happy that you were trying to go somewhere in life and you were trying to do something a little bit different? How was their reaction to having to sign those papers at when you were such a young age? Okay, so yeah, I joined at 18. I actually signed the papers when I was 17. And my parents actually had to sign them. I had to wait until I graduated to actually go off to basic training. And wow, so they actually had to sign the papers. You were still in high school? That's kind of crazy. Yeah, I was still in high school. When the recruiters, there's recruiters that come to pretty much every high school, and they went to mine, and they kind of got me into it. They talked me into it. I already had kind of a feeling that I wanted to do something a little bit different with my life. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do when I first, was about to leave high school. So I kind of just chose this path because that was the best path for me at the time. I didn't have the best grades, so I probably wasn't going to college. I didn't have money saved up for college, so there was another reason why I wasn't going to college. So I knew that in my hometown, everything was kind of small, right? And I needed to, for myself, get out there and try something new. And that's what I ended up doing by joining the military, was my way out to express myself and to get out of the small town that I was in and move on to the bigger and better world that's out there. And if you're thinking about joining the military, I would consider that option. It will get you out and about and teach you some valuable lessons in life. So once you signed up and shipped off after high school, where did you go? What duty station did you end up at? So in July of 2007, I graduated in May. And in July of 2007, I shipped out to Fort Knox. I was one of the last groups that actually went to basic training in Fort Knox. I think they closed that down in 2008, and it was no longer a training base for basic training. So that's where I went. That's where I went to basic training. Like, as soon as I got out of high school, I had already been signed up. So I went out to Fort Knox and did 9 weeks of basic training there. How was that? Fort Knox wasn't too bad. From what I remember, it was definitely an experience, and that's because I was young at the time. I was only 18, so I had never experienced something like that. It was a very good experience to go there. And yes, I was afraid in the beginning. I did not want to leave to go to basic training. Like, I really had second thoughts about it, but I did balls up and I went, and I'm glad I did because it was amazing. It was a good experience looking back on it. Basic training was a lot of fun. I met a lot of cool people. We did a lot of cool things. I learned how to do a lot of life skills, and I just learned a lot of stuff, and I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't go back and change it even if I could. Now, after basic, what happened after basic? Where did you go after basic training? Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So that's where I went to AIT, and that's where I learned how to do my job. So I signed up when I first signed the papers to join the Army. I signed up as a 63 Bravo, which was a wheeled vehicle mechanic. So you were a mechanic? But over time, the MOS changed numbers and it changed descriptions just a little bit. So it turned out being a 91 Bravo, which is a all-ground vehicle mechanic. So anything that runs on the ground, that doesn't include helicopters or planes or anything like that. I was just a mechanic, a general mechanic to fix anything, including tanks and wheeled vehicles. Where were you stationed after your AIT? After your training, where did you go after that? Fort Leonard Wood. Fort Lost in the Woods. Yeah, I know that, right? Place. I know that place. Lost in the Woods, yeah. That's, everybody knows that. I did 5 years there at Fort Leonard Wood. 5 years, wow. 2 deployments out of there, Iraq and Afghanistan, both 5th Engineers, and both 2 different companies in the 5th Engineers. All right. So let's get into that. Both times. How were the deployments? You said you went on 2 deployments. How were they? So both of the deployments were a year long. One was in Iraq, one was in Afghanistan. I went to Iraq in 2008 to 2009, and then I went to Afghanistan 11 to 12. So both of them were a year. Both of them were with the same battalion, but I had different roles in both places. But I was still a mechanic in both places. I just had more exposure to different things with both deployments. And what was that like? Which one was worse in your opinion? Like, well, they both sucked. Was a little more dangerous in your opinion? I know that when you went to Iraq, you were towards the later stage of Iraq, and when you went to Afghanistan, you were more towards the beginning stages. Both, you know, anytime you deploy somewhere else to another country, if you're a soldier and you go somewhere else, I mean, it's expected. And in fact, I wanted to do it until I got there, and then I didn't want to do it anymore because it's not always what you see, you know, that can sway your mind. It's, you have to see it to believe it, right? Like everybody says it's not that good, you know, it's a shitty place. But, and then you see it and you realize that it wasn't just talk. It really is a shitty place. Like, it really is a shitty place. So I was a part of one of the last surges in Iraq because I went in 2008 and Iraq had been going on pretty heavily for years. And President Bush at the time wanted to send a bunch of troops over there to try to mitigate all the problems that had arose the past couple of years, like 06 to 09, that type of era with all the IEDs and all the, you know, snipers and everything that was going on. I mean, they even had, as far as the gunners had to duck down underneath bridges because they were putting wires and basically fishing line underneath the bridges. So when we came through, they would chop their, you know, try to chop their head off and stuff. So there was a whole bunch of different problems because it had developed into that's why there was a last surge, and I was a part of that. But I was also a part of a surge in Afghanistan in 2011, where Obama, you know, he sent troops over there to try to basically do the same thing, contain the problem which had arose over time in Afghanistan. So I was actually a part of 2 different surges of influx of troops, and I thought that was pretty cool to be a part of both of them. But Afghanistan was worse than Iraq, and that's just due to the timing, right? Iraq had been going on for a while, but when I went to Afghanistan, it had been going on for a little bit, but it had started to really pick up, and they were really starting to get good with the tactics that they were using to try to do things to us. They were really starting to get good at it, and I seen a lot more action in Afghanistan than I did in Iraq. Mention that you were in both surges. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Both surges of an influx of troops. that came to both places, and you happen to be a part of both of them. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. So okay, the deployments are done. What was it like coming back after the deployments, after being overseas for a year? How was it like coming back? From Iraq or Afghanistan? Both. So coming back from both deployments, obviously I was 18 when I went to Iraq, and then I was 20, I was 20, almost 21 when I went to Afghanistan. And because they were kind of close together, I basically did a year over there, a year back, and then another year over there. So my whole 3 years, first 3 years in the Army, 2 of them were deployed. So that was all I knew of the military. So coming back to where everything was calm was a problem at first. I'm not gonna lie, it was difficult to even associate or socialize with other people. It was difficult. But over time, I did learn the skills, and I did develop enough to be cordial with everybody and not, get my head out of the combat zone and back into the life that's back here, which is a good life. Like, a lot of people take it for granted. It is a good life that we live over here compared to other countries where they don't have as much freedom and as much access to things that we have over here. Wow, so adjusting was difficult? Yeah, I mean, coming back was an adjustment. It was a difficult adjustment. That's correct. Yep. And what do you do to cope with all of this stuff? For me, I like to do YouTube videos. So, wow. I mean, I'm on an interview right now. Yep. I love doing this type of stuff. And that, to me, is my coping mechanism. If anybody really knows me and has, been around me in real life, not just on here, I like to talk. I'm an expressive person, so I like to talk. And for me, this type of content, this type of stuff that I'm doing is something that I use to cope with the stressors in my life. This is fun for me, and I love doing it. So for me, YouTube is one of my coping mechanisms. Yep. You know what? That's good. I also make YouTube videos, and that helps me cope with what's going on as well. It's a good stress reliever for me. It's fun. I like to do it, and I like engaging with the audience. In fact, I want to know if there's other vets out there that want to be on this podcast. You just come. You can email me at iraqstanpodcast@gmail.com. Get at me. I would love to have you on here, and I will do an interview with you. We can talk. We can do a podcast episode on some of the things that you do and some of the things that have helped you get through whatever's going on. It's nice for other veterans to hear what other people have to say. It is a nice coping mechanism to hear stories. And to tell stories. Thank you guys for listening to me, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So if you're out there and you want to be a part of this podcast, you can hit me up, iraqstanpodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back with another episode. Enjoy. See ya.